right. Today I have Lesline Pittman. How's it going?
Good, Vega. I'm so happy that I'm here because I'm excited to get started.
Awesome. No, excited to have you. So I'll do a poor man's version of an introduction, and then I'll let you tell people about yourself. But you teach yoga to really busy moms. You're also a registered nurse. You're a certified life coach. You got a lot going on. When we did our prep call, I was just kind of enamored and fascinated by kind of your story and how being a mom has kind of evolved, kind of your way of thinking, your career and path, and really want to dive into your journey around entrepreneurship. You also are very much connected to your community. You're a director of Women on the Rise, which helps uplift women and kind of their voice to inspire others. So I think you're a fantastic guest for the show. Yeah, I'm really excited to start. So enough of me talking. Tell people a little bit about your background, how'd you get started, and why you took the dive into entrepreneurship.
No, that was an incredible introduction. And why did I take the dive? It was kind of accidentally taking a dive. I didn't realize that I was becoming an entrepreneur. I just knew that I loved yoga. As you already said, I am a yoga teacher and it's my passion. And I didn't realize that my passion was also my purpose. I don't know if I mentioned this part too when we did our call, but I've always struggled with not thinking I had a purpose. And I see people around me, like my husband, he's a software developer and that's his thing. He loves that. He is passionate about computers. And I remember this was maybe 3 or 4 years. This was before our kids. Everything is now that you have it's everything's before kids. So my son is now 4. So maybe it was 6 years ago. I remember we were in the car, my husband and I, going somewhere, and I was like, man, I am so jealous of you that you found your purpose. This is your thing. And the reason I said that was because he was actually listening to a software developer podcast. And I was like, they have podcasts for this. And I was we could say trolling. I'd be trolling him. And he was like, yeah, Leslie. And I was like, wow, I know I'm making fun of you. That's just how I kind of a defense mechanism kind of thing. But I was also kind of jealous because I was like, wow, you love this software development thing so much that even on the weekends, on your off time, you're listening about how to be better in software development. And I remember saying out loud, I wish I could find what I'm passionate about. That was 6 years ago. And then fast forward, 3.5 years later, we had my son. I was offered a yoga teacher scholarship. And I was like, sure, why not? Because this was also in the pandemic. So yes, I was busy with my kids, but when they were sleeping, I didn't have anything to do. So I was like, oh, I could just, study about yoga. I've always loved it because I've been practicing since 2009. I was like, I want to learn more about it. But I didn't realize that this was what I was supposed to do. So yes, I'm studying and I'm learning and I'm teaching my family and friends, but I was still not this is what you're supposed to do. There wasn't that light bulb moment yet. So yeah.
That's awesome. No, that's it's funny because I always knew that I liked business. Okay. I always knew that it was really fascinating to me. I never really defined it as my passion until I started the podcast. Which was interesting. It's just I always knew that business was interesting to me. My mom's an accounting professor. I used to go to my dad's MBA classes when I was in elementary school. So I've always been surrounded around business, or surrounded by business, I should say. But I never thought of it as my passion. I just thought it was oh yeah, there's just this thing that I'm decent at. And I just kind of centered my career around. And it wasn't until I started talking to entrepreneurs and seeing how energizing those conversations were, where I was like, oh, this is what a passion is.
Yeah. That's exactly it. Energizing. That is the word. When you connect with people who we're all, yes, my zone of genius, whatever, is wellness and all of that, and yours is business. But the similarity is like we've taken risk. And I think
Yes.
that's why entrepreneurs we have that connection, is because we've all taken a
Yes.
plural, to get where we are today. And
Mhm.
I know that's what it makes these conversations so energizing, because it's like, oh, you found somebody who knows what it's
Yes.
like to be
Yes.
in the trench.
Yes. Yes. It's such a guest said it's like an illness. Entrepreneurship is like an illness. And I think it is.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
once you find that thing that you really, really like and you take a bite out of it, it's like
Mm-hmm.
everything else is more dull.
Yep. That's very true. It nailed it.
Yeah. So okay, so let's dive into this. So you start, leaning into yoga. You start studying. Um, from a business standpoint, what was your first action? Like you were doing the study, like you could become a yoga teacher at a gym or get a job in yoga. What made you venture out on your own?
That's a really good question. Okay, this is okay. I like this question because yes, yoga typically, and it's slowly evolving. Typically, when people think yoga, they think free. They think it's free, like that, or that it's a very reduced rate. But yoga is all about energy, and we were already talking about energy, but it really is about I'm giving you my energy. That's my service that I offer
Mm.
to people. And when I started studying, when I did my certification and I was studying it, I was like, okay, this is amazing. This is amazing. And then towards the end, they gave you like a little snippet of like the business of how you can sell your services, but it wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the social media algorithms were in my favor. And one day I was scrolling Instagram, and I found a mentor, a Black like yoga instructor who has made her own business as a yoga teacher. So I invested in her, and it was like a 6 week course, with other yogis of color, and we would meet once a week, and she would just give us like the ins and out of being an entrepreneur and a yoga teacher.
Yeah.
Because there are a lot of people, like, the more I'm putting myself out there, people are like, oh yeah, I'm a yoga teacher too. And it's like, okay, cool, like, how are you doing business? Like, let's, and then
Yeah.
it's like it gets quiet and awkward, and I'm just like, so how are we getting paid? And
Yeah.
so I was really fortunate to be in that mentorship program, because my mentor shared with us how you can turn this into a business.
Yeah.
So that was my first step, was investing in somebody that's doing something that I want to do, who's a lot of steps ahead of me.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
I like that. I do want to jump a little bit into kind of the theme of mentorship and finding people that have done it before and
Yeah.
can kind of coach you through it. But first, I'm this keeps ringing in my head, and I'm just curious. We'll go off the beaten path a little bit. How, as you're going through that mentorship program, and you talk about how a lot of people see yoga as free, right? Um, but you're giving people this energy, you're giving people kind of these tools to kind of recenter themselves and kind of put their next best foot forward. My question is, how do I say this? I haven't done yoga a lot. Um, but I think a lot of what meditating and yoga together has done for me when I've done it has been kind of this calming effect, kind of putting the business things in my head, all of the stresses kind of to the side, and like letting it's not that serious, right? Not taking myself too serious, is being mindful of the self-inflicted deadlines and things like that. on this flip side, business is really about that go, that like you got to hit the deadlines, you got to get customers, you got to market. Like, so for me, I don't know how I've struggled with trying to put those two things together. And so I'm just very curious for you that doing that, like, how was that for you going through that mentorship program? Like, how was it taking the chaos of what you were leaning into of business while still doing what you love and making that work together? Because listen, I'm not trying to start a yoga business, but I struggle with doing yoga because of my business, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, this is so good. I'm sorry, I'm like excited. This is a great question and that's why I feel like, from what I've seen, I've only been in the entrepreneur space as a yoga teacher for only a few years, but I think that's why a lot of yoga teachers kind of get a little afraid to come over to the business side, because business, like you said, there's the marketing, there's all the stuff about it and that I'm learning that you have to do. You have to like constantly be putting yourself out there. And that can be intimidating. I know, I'm speaking for me. I know it can be intimidating. So that's why, I chose to invest in myself to get somebody that's doing both. And going back to what you said, it's like, how do you do both? The first word that came to my head was like alignment. Like, just yoga has taught me how to be in alignment with myself. So when I know how to be in alignment with myself, the business side, I'm like, okay, does this feel right in my body? Like even this exchange, like how we got connected, I was like, okay, yeah, no, this feels good. Like, I was like, this is good to do. And it actually, being a yoga teacher and practicing yoga has taught me, like, it teaches you, it just teaches you alignment and being mindful, which is something you said that too. It teaches you how to be mindful and also to not judge yourself. So yes, with business, we're taught it's go, 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 go. But with yoga, I've learned this, like, nothing is that's meant for me will pass me by. So I can sit in that. I can meditate on that. Because yes, there are days that I'm just like, oh my gosh, am I missing out? Am I missing out? And then I'll just meditate on that for the day. I'll be like, you know what? I can say that to myself. There's different types of meditations that you can do. There's walking meditation. There's mantra meditation. So saying what's meant for me will not pass me by. And just repeating that to myself as I sit here and just sitting on that. There's a sense of peace that washes over me. And then by having that calm peacefulness, I end up attracting the things that are supposed to be for me, for my business. So it's twofold. Like, it's twofold.
That's so interesting. It makes me think about a previous episode. Again, these podcasts are like a masterclass for me as a human and as a business person. But Jason Campbell, he's also a yogi, I think is the term.
Yeah, yogi. Yep, you're
right. And he talks about in his travels, he kind of got some of these proverbs. I think it was in Ghana, around the concept of time. And I think it's a lot of what you're saying, which is what's meant for you is not going to pass you by. And so you might be feeling under pressure around time. There's no real need for that because you're not going to miss out on it. So it's really interesting. That's something that, again, the alignment, I need to work on that because I can't get this thing under control.
Did you say can't or can?
I can't. I will. No, I shouldn't say can't. Yeah. I struggle with keeping this thing under control. I shouldn't say I can't. I will keep it under control. It's just a struggle.
And
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, there's just so much with yoga that, like, it's not just the physical movement. It's not just which this is a myth, stopping all of those thoughts. Cause you shared that you practiced meditating and yoga before. And I know a lot of people, when they hear yoga and they hear meditating, they're like, oh, that means I have to silence my brain. And that's not true. Like,
Right.
just like I've heard this phrase the other day, and I thought it was just how, the air we breathe in air and we breathe out, just how we breathe, like that's how our thoughts are. Like we're supposed to be constantly, thinking. And
Yeah.
and that's a whole nother conversation going into how you can I don't want to say control your thoughts, but we have control over our thoughts. And but anyways, what I'm getting at is this is like, the more you practice yoga, it really
Mhm.
will help business. It will help your business thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Again, another person that's telling me I need to do yoga. I need to do yoga. All right. So let's talk a little bit more about the business side and your journey. So you talked about investing in a mentor that kind of opened your eyes and gave you kind of a little bit of a blueprint on how to turn this into a profit business. Um, eh, Tell me a little bit more about how you figured out what your niche was going to be. How did you figure out where you wanted to focus specifically within the yoga space? Because there are tons of yogis out there.
Hmm.
How did you kind of determine what made you so special?
Yeah. Yeah, the niche. Oh, every time I hear, I'm like, oh God, it's because it's like that's like one of the first things when you invest in any type of mentor, like for business and whatnot. And that was week one of that mentorship that I mentioned to you. Is it's like, what's your need? Who do you want to serve? Like getting clear on that. And I remember I was so resistant to this whole niching thing. And I remember that same mentor that I had, she was like, once you niche down, you're gonna attract the people that you want, and even people that you didn't think. And this was like a couple years ago. And here we are like 2 years later, and there's people, because my niche is moms, our
Mm,
moms. I'm a
right.
mom. I have two kids. I have a 4 year old and a 2.5 year old boy, girl. And I know what it's like to be stressed. Like, and so that's my whole niche, is like serving busy moms, because all the moms I talk to are always like, I'm so busy. And I'm included in that. But I've chosen to change that word to busy, because I feel like busy, it's like, it can just add all this pressure too. It's like, well, I'm always busy, so I don't have time for yoga. I don't have, and what you're really saying, which is a part of my whole thing, is that you don't have time for yourself. And if you don't have time for yourself, then you won't have you're gonna be frustrated in all avenues of your life.
Yeah.
But moms is my niche because I'm a mom and I want to help those that are like me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I no, I love that, and I love the point about not making time for yourself. Because I think if you don't make time for yourself, you're not giving the people around you the best version of yourself. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and yeah, listen, I've got a 7-month-old, and
Yeah.
the last 7 months have revealed a lot of things.
Yeah.
Just about where we um again, and I can only imagine as a mother, just for me as a dad, like the impatience that I really lived my whole life with.
Yeah. Yeah.
My feeling of control, or addiction to control, I guess, is probably the better way to say it, and realizing now this is a whole human, and you can't really control what they're doing, what they're feeling. You just gotta do that, and it's an evolution, and I can only imagine that being so much tougher for a mother,
Mhm.
because this child is a part of you, right? They
Yeah.
within you. So I love that niche, and I love, there's something special about serving people that you're a part of that community, right? There's something
Right.
special about being like a part of it and relating to the struggles that your customers having. And so I'm sure that that's had has a deeply resonates with your customers. So that's awesome.
Thanks.
So every business starts at zero.
Yeah.
How'd you get your first customer?
Yeah, that's a great question. My first customer, ooh, that's a good one. And it's so interesting because I'm thinking about this person and how she's supported me like in everything that I'm
Yeah.
doing, which is so, it's just so beautiful. Because going back to what you said, like once you realize what your niche is and who you want to serve, and for me, my niche is me. It's just like this whole energetic thing because it's like when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, things just flow and like
Yeah.
it's yes, I'm still in the beginning phases of my business. Like I'm not six figures. I'm not there yet. But just understanding how once you know what you're supposed to do, the people will come and it's easy. Like I
Yeah.
don't even have to really sell to those people. I'm just like, hey, I'm doing this, and then boom, it's like
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I like get surprised. So going back to what you said, you asked me how, or will you ask the question again?
Yeah. How did you get your first customer?
Yeah. So I actually got my first customer from another community I was a part of. We both went through the it's I've invested in a few different things. And so this was
Mm,
another type of community I was a part of because part of my story, I had my own life coach because
mm,
after my second child, I was the second child, I don't even know, the second child and the pandemic. I don't have the words. Like I'm still processing it. It was a lot. It was
yeah.
a lot. And I remember feeling so lonely and
Mm,
very, very unprepared
mm,
because I'm somebody like I'm also a registered nurse. So I'm somebody that's like, okay, you got to prepare for the test. I will study weeks in advance, study every single day. Like that's who I am. So when my daughter came around, I was just like, I was not prepared.
mm.
And so, with that being said, I invested in a life coach, and that customer came from that same community because with having that life coach, I was like, I want to help people too. And from that community, anyways, just so she followed me along. Like she has been following me along with my whole business, and she I created a 12-week program. She purchased that. I now have my virtual yoga studio. She's a member of that. Like, so she's always just been investing in me, and it's just really beautiful. So I hope that answers the how.
No, that's no, it's great because there's this book. I can't remember the author, but it's called Superfans. And I think it speaks to exactly what you're highlighting. As you build your followers, community, the people that support you, there's kind of always this small percentage of people that are truly bought in and committed and love what you're doing, and they become your advocates, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that um it's amazing that your first customer was, one of those advocates, but I think that it speaks to what you said earlier, like when you're doing the right thing and you're in alignment, kind of things start flowing. And I'm sure that um as your business pivots and as your business grows, that person is going to follow you, support you, and then also give you the feedback and be like, hey, this is
Yeah.
working, this wasn't working. And I think that that type of relationship of a kind of super fan or super supporter, I think is incredibly important.
It is, and I wrote down that book because I'm gonna read that book. Because that's definitely what that person has been. Like
Yeah.
the emails that I send, like she's one of the few that will, we have each other's numbers too. So she'll message me and just be like, like I mentioned, a month or so ago, I had COVID, and I shared that with my community. I was like, hey guys, I had COVID, and like not this is how I overcame, but I was kind of quiet for a few weeks because I was resting. And she texted me and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry you had COVID. Like I hope you get better. And I
Yeah.
was like, wow, like I was just like, that's really sweet. Like for
Yeah.
her to to respond and to know that she's in my corner. And just talking about COVID and the pandemic, like I was defeated when I got COVID. I was just like, look at me, a yoga teacher and a nurse. Like, how, like, really, I'm supposed to be the healthy one. And I had a lot of judgments behind that, and a lot of kind of like shame.
Yeah.
And I had to work through that. And that's why I'm really thankful for my yoga practice, because, just meditating and moving my body and paying attention to my thoughts and being like, you're a human. Like, you're a human being, Lesline. Like, things are going to happen, and that doesn't make you less than. Like, you are still needed and here to you need to share. So that's why I remember I sent that email out to my community, and I was like, look, I got it. It finally happened. But I'm still here, and these are the lessons, that I learned. And the biggest lesson was to slow down, because going back to what you were saying with business is like, go, 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 go. Yeah. But yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have to with business, we do. But this is like the yoga side of me. You have to slow down. Like, you have to, because we're not machines. Like, we're not machines. And the more that we rest, like intentionally rest, not just like, oh, I'm exhausted, and then you hit the couch or the bed and you pass out. But like, when you intentionally rest, that's when, like, your subconscious mind can actually start working. And then you get those really great ideas, and things just are like, oh, that's how it's supposed to be. But if you're just at the computer, like, I gotta get this done, it's not gonna be good. It's
not. You're so right. And it's funny because you're like speaking to my soul, because I mean, my business partners, co-founders, my wife, everyone's like, you're doing a lot at the speed, and the speed of which you're doing is kind of insane. And you said we're not machines. I've been telling myself I was a machine for like the last decade and a half. I'm the worst. I'm the worst. I'm literally the worst. And so it's just so funny, because you're right. And I've been in therapy. I'm a big advocate for therapy. I think it's fantastic. At least for me, it's every week I have an hour to just kind of check in with what's going on up top. But I think one of the things that has come out of it is your exact point. There's value in intentional rest. It's not about, oh, like you said, oh man, it's been a rough week, I'm just gonna grab a drink and sit on the couch. It's like, no, be intentional about, okay, when I'm doing this thing's purpose is for me to recharge. And I think that for me, that's been incredibly powerful. And then the other thing, just to your point, just you're saying so much, it's so powerful. So I'm recovering from my second bout with COVID. So the first time I got COVID, you're right. There's a level of embarrassment and shame that comes with it. Yeah. It's such a weird feeling, because you do everything you can to like avoid it, obviously. And then you kind of get that email from your doctor or text or whatever you did, and there's just like, you test positive, and you're just like, what did I do? And then and then there's the shame of like, oh man, who was I around? Now I gotta send them a text, and now I gotta how am I living? And like, it's such a weird feeling. And I think as at least you have this initial feeling of frustration, another feeling of embarrassment, and then you start realizing you're just like, no, it's just, I'm a whole person, and this is just kind of the experience, and it's unfortunate, and we've got to work through it. But I've never thought about it in the context of being a business person or being an entrepreneur, because the first time I was still at my job, and it
Okay.
was frustrating. I had to
Mhm.
kind of slow down and I could, when you're at a job, you're like, oh, okay, I'll kind of take a couple less meetings. That's fine. But when
Yeah.
you're an entrepreneur, you
Yeah.
start feeling, at least for me, you start feeling that pressure of I'm not doing enough. I got to get that Instagram post out. I've got to respond to this
Mhm.
thing.
Mhm.
And over the last 10 days, like I've mentally just been stressing myself out because I felt like I wasn't doing enough. And to your point, if it would have been so much power, so much more impactful if I just looked at this as this is forced recovery. Like, let me just be intentional about taking a break, getting
Yeah.
myself well, and then going back at it. And it's just, it's interesting. Like, you're literally speaking to my soul because I'm like, this was the sign for me to take a 10-day kind of slow down.
Right.
You can still respond to a few emails, but stop
Yes.
pressuring yourself.
Right. Yes. And I'm speaking to me too, because like I like to be very transparent. It's similar too. I'm very go, go, go too. Like I like to change that though to like I'm very determined. And
Mm,
like now that I'm plugged into my purpose, I'm like, okay. And now that I've niched down and like I have my stuff together for the most part, like I'm putting myself out there. So when I see opportunities, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. And I'm, connecting and doing all of that stuff. So when I got COVID back a couple of months ago, I was like, oh, I guess I do need to slow down. And what was funny was I was talking with a friend and sharing with her, like, I know I need to slow down. Like it was like a week or two before I got diagnosed. And I was like, but I just don't want to. And I don't really know. Like I do know how, obviously, because I'm a yoga teacher, but I was just like, I was like, I'm just so excited. Like I'm connecting with people and making these connections. Like I don't want to miss anything. And then 2 weeks later, I get COVID. And I was like,
yeah,
okay, God, I get it. Like you
yeah,
are, I guess, have a very direct line because a lot of things that I say, it
yeah.
happens.
Yes,
So
yes,
yeah.
you're so right. Like literally the Friday before, I had this thought. I don't know if you've seen the gif of Kobe Bryant where he's like, yeah, he's just
Oh,
so determined. I literally told my wife, I said, that's how I feel about work right now. I'm locked
yeah.
in, I'm ready to go. And I'm like, she's like, what are you gonna do this weekend? I was like, I'm gonna work. And then COVID stopped you. It's you're absolutely right. It's God has a way to just be like, settle down. It's just
Yeah.
settle down.
Yeah.
Oh
Oh.
man. Okay, so to your theme, you said a couple things that I'm really curious to get your perspective on and dive into. You talked about transparency, and you've talked about um kind of being open, and when you're in alignment, you can just be yourself and you're just kind of working through that. Um, Talk to me a little bit about how being transparent and being open about what's going on in your life and who you are, and really allowing your, lack of a better word, customers
Yeah.
have a lens into your life and who you are. Like, how's that experience been for you?
Scary.
Mm,
It's very scary. And I recently, yesterday, actually, I just posted on LinkedIn, like a post talking about my hair and, um, well, let me rewind. So being more connected, like to God, like becoming a yoga teacher has actually helped me be more connected to God. Cause, maybe like when I moved out of my parents' house, so that was like, I don't know, like 8 or so years ago now. I was like, I was like, God, that's not for me. Like I just, here I'm being transparent again.
yeah.
Okay. And then fast forward, got certified as a yoga teacher, and I realized I was getting more connected with my spirituality and with God. And with that, I was also tapping into my intuition, which intuition I've heard is just, God speaking to you.
Mm,
And I've noticed my intuition, it it like I hear it in different ways and I feel it. It's like I hear it, I feel it. That's how best I can describe it. And so going back to that post, like with being transparent, I'm getting to the point. With being transparent, it's a lot of just me listening to my intuition and being comfortable in that. And the only way I've learned how to be comfortable with, because we all hear our intuition, it's just a matter if we're going to act on it. It's with yoga. It's really like it all comes back to it. But so yesterday I was like, I'm going to post about my hair because I'm getting updated headshots. And I was like, since I made the appointment, I was like, oh, maybe I should change my hair, get braids, or maybe I should just shave my head again because I've been like bald. I've done like so many different things with my hair. And I was like, what are you doing, Lesline? Like, this is you. Like, you know, you preaching to people here that this is, you know, your fullest self. This is who you are. And having this like my 4C hair and all of that, it can be kind of like, oh God, like, I don't want people to see my hair like this. And I'm now a businesswoman, like businesswomen are supposed to look a certain way. And so anyways, I was thinking about this the past few weeks. And then yesterday, listening to my intuition, it's like, share what you're thinking, Lesline. Like, share what you're thinking on LinkedIn and take a picture. Not even have any lipstick or I just like unfiltered, took a picture, posted that on LinkedIn with pretty much what I just said to you of my hesitancy of like, should I keep my hair this way? Should I get it, you know? And so when I was like listening to my intuition to do that post, I was scared. And I was scared because it's me being vulnerable and being vulnerable, judgment. A lot of judgment, which I've talked about before. It's a lot of judgment. I've been very judgmental of myself. Like me, Lesline, I'm my harshest critic. And thankfully, I'm a big advocate for therapy as well. I'm in therapy as well, too. That is a lot of the work, is like not getting rid, but working through the judgment, working through it. And some people may be like, it's just a post, like it's just social media, you know, but a lot of the time, not majority of the time that I post, it's intuitively led. Like it's intuition. It's like God's like, you should go live, or you should, and I'm like, what? And then I get like sweaty hands, like my hands get sweaty, and I'm like, oh, okay, this means I have to do it. And I don't say have to like in like a mandatory way, but it's like I'm here to serve. And most of the time when I post these things, people either send me a message or months later I'll be out and they're like, oh, I saw you post that. Like, that was really inspiring, Lesline. And I'm like, well, why didn't you like comment in the post? But okay, it's fine, because I'm just out here thinking I'm talking into a void. But anyways, I say all that to say transparency is scary. I'm in the trenches of being a business owner. I'm a new business, and it's scary. It's scary. So
it's. I love the fact. I appreciate you sharing that, and I love the fact that you highlighted the vulnerability, because that is such a very real thing. I know I struggle with that even myself, and in many ways, I mean, not even in many ways, in all ways, I can hide myself behind my business, right? My business isn't me, you know, like I'm not, you know, putting myself out there. Yes, I do independent consulting, but it's primarily through relationships I've had and companies I've worked with in the past. But the idea of, oh, you know, well, this is Yensel and this is Yensel's brand, or this is the Be Helpful podcast and this is a brand, and I'm just a host. I'm just, you know, like it's easy to hide behind your business. But I think what's really happening for me, and this is kind of a mini 1-minute therapy session, is like, it's that vulnerability that you're trying to avoid. You don't want to feel that rejection. You don't like that silence is deafening, right? Like that I just put myself out there and I'm asking I'm trying to tell my peers and my friends about what's going on in my business, and like no one's responded yet. Like,
Yeah.
how did, like, are people, this is a question that pops in my head all the time. Are people tired of hearing about this? Are people tired of hearing about what's going on with my life and my business? And it is hard. It is hard. And especially when your business is you, right?
Yes.
That is very difficult. And I honestly think the future of this world is every person's a business, right? Like Jay-Z said this years ago.
Yeah.
like we are literally businesses. And so yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that, because that vulnerability is a hurdle that I think a lot of people have to overcome.
And just continue with that, my business, because my name is in my business, Lesline Does Wellness LLC. Like, it's me. Like, I'm doing wellness, like, with you, like, or the mom, whomever it is, like, I'm here doing it too. And that's why I named it that, because my business, Lesline Does Wellness, because I'm going through this with you. Like, I'm not just selling something. Like, yes, I'm selling a service, which is me. So my business is very personal.
Yeah.
It's very personal. And I know that's why I've attracted the opportunities and people, because it's me. It's me.
Yeah.
It's not a bag. It's not a pen. It's me. And it's so personal. And I know also that's why I'm not an overnight success. Like, it's not that. And I was actually thinking that to myself, like, I think it was yesterday, this morning, I was like, I'm glad I'm not an overnight success. Like, I'm glad I didn't make the 6 figures in the 6 months, whatever, because like, I'm here building a foundation to last, even like when I go and like when I transition on and pass away, for my kids, so they can have this and do what they want with it, and just to help other people, because there's so many people, as I'm building this foundation, who have just said, you're so motivating, you're so inspiring. And it gives me goosebumps to even share just how it's like, it's not about me. That's also something, like, my business is it's not about me. And it's not even saying that in like a high, like I'm better, like we're all the same, but just knowing that, like, it's not about me. There's people out here that are struggling, struggling. And as a nurse, being a nurse, I see it. Like, I work for an insurance company right now, but I review NICU baby charts, and reading these records of these moms, and they're using drugs and just they're trying to escape. And we're all trying to do that. That's like the biggest theme. We're all trying to escape the pain and the judgment and the fear, the shame. We're trying to escape all of these quote unquote scary feelings. But when you actually tackle them head on, and you have somebody holding your hand, like, I've done it too. I've done it too. I've faced these fears, these judgments. You're gonna be okay, but it's necessary so you get to the other side. It's necessary so you're your best self, so you can have that healthy baby, or that you can serve in the community the way that you want to serve, or you can be the speaker that you always wanted to be. You have to face those things. You have to.
Yeah, that's so powerful, and it's so well said, because that is everything you articulated. I think in a less, life impactful way, is exactly why this podcast exists, right? It's that feeling of, I'm terrified, I'm taking this massive risk, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yep.
I just need someone to hold my hand and just be like, yo, it's going to be okay. We've been through it. Yeah, that's tough. Here's a path. I think that's just so well said, because at the end of the day, what better way to help other people by doing that, right? Like, giving them your experience and saying, hey, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just giving you a lens into someone else who has dealt with this before, because what your experience, it's very rare to have a very unique experience. Like, meaning like no one else has gone through this before. That's very rare. But it still feels personal and unique. And so getting that additional experience or that additional perspective, I think is super powerful. So, keep doing what you're doing. Okay. So I'm over the years, this kind of question, even before the podcast, has evolved, right? It started with the how do you balance life and work, right? And then it moved into like, how do you integrate life and work? And now it's really just like, how does you as a whole human balance all of your responsibilities? Because I think more and more people are realizing that work and life is just life.
Yeah.
And I'm curious of your perspective, especially because your business is you. How do you manage those responsibilities? Because it's not like at 5 o'clock you just turn off the lights, right? Like,
right.
How do you balance those responsibilities and make sure that you're checking in with yourself, you're being present for your kids, you're being present for your husband, you're being present for yourself? Like, how are you in your business? How are you doing all that? That is probably the best answer ever.
That's gosh. Working on, every day is different. Every day is different, especially because I have 2 young kids. And like, too, like you have a baby. Like they are right now, it's like they're changing so fast. They get sick all of the time. So it's like some days are not going to be the picture perfect aesthetic vibes that we see like on IG and stuff. Like some days I am like, where's my journal? Some days like I have my journal at my desk, like I have this, and some days I'll clock in and then I'll do a little bit of work and then I'll take 10 minutes and I will journal while I'm on the clock. I'm going to say that. Because that's that's how I have to get it in some days. So I'm not gonna take that away from myself, like, well, I'm clocked in. No, because these jobs, like they don't care about you like that. And journaling is one way that I check in with myself. It's one way that I tap in with myself. So I will journal sometimes on the clock. I will do that. Or I make, because you also said something how like the work-life balance, how it's now like work is like life, like it's all meshed, like it's the same, especially because a lot of us are working from home. So one thing that I do to separate, because I really feel like it's important to separate the work and the life, is I'll go outside. Like I live in Florida, so like it's always sunny a majority of the time. So I'm fortunate, because I know a lot of people, like it's not like that for you guys. So, but I take advantage of the sun and getting that vitamin D, because that boosts my mood. Because I'll notice that's something else. Like I'll work maybe like an hour spurts at a time. That's also something else. So like I'll be like, okay, say I clocked in at 8, right? At 9, I'll work 8 to 9, like focus. And then I'll be, okay, I'm going to get up. So if that gets up, that means I get up and I put a load of laundry or something like that. And then once it comes around this time of day, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go outside, take a walk, and I don't bring my phone. I leave my phone. And I know sometimes that's probably bad, because God forbid, like something happens to me, I get snatched away. I don't know. But not speaking those things out into existence. So I leave my phone and I just walk. And sometimes I'll even pray, or just express gratitude for the day, for my breath, for my legs, like that I can move my own body. Like these are things that I know sometimes I take advantage of. And when I got COVID, like last month, I remember I had like such body aches. My hands were really hurting. And I was just like, oh my God, like it was just, anyways. So going outside, journaling, these are ways that I get that balance in. But not every day is the same. Like that's also, it's like not every day is the same, and learning how to not judge myself. So if I wake up one day and like my son has a fever, I'm like, okay, I have to focus on him today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I hope that answered the question.
I think that was great. It was the balance of some of the tactical things that you do and also the big picture things. That was a fantastic answer. And one of the things that I've read about and I want to put into practice that, you know, you're a real life example of it working is working in these spurts. I talked to or another episode that's in this season. I started to a learning coach, Greg, and he talks about how, you know, trying to just be heads down and learn for hours at a time doesn't work.
Yeah.
Your brain just can't kind of handle it. This is my poor man's, you know, version of it. But you're right. It's like working in those 60-minute, 90-minute spurts and then taking a break and kind of going off and doing something else, I think is super helpful. And it's something that I told myself I need to do, because you do hit that slump if you've been going 4 hours straight and you're just like, oh, now it's like 2-3 hours before you get that energy. And again, with a kid, now you got to pick them up from daycare, or you gotta make sure there's food, or, you know, so building that into your schedule, I think is a really good way to try to balance out all of these different competing priorities and
competing. And that's the thing. And this is me, my coaching side, but one way you can make that actually happen is using your phone and setting timers. You know what I mean? Like setting every hour, having your phone go off. And I know me, I'm like, oh, damn it. Like, I don't want to get up. I'm still like, I'm just, you know, I'm being transparent, but like, you know, set the timer. If you don't get up, at least like you're moving in the right direction of like, okay, I'll get up the second hour. Like, you know, so because I know how it is. And I'm somebody that's like, I gotta get this done. So setting the timer, start with that, like setting a timer every hour of your day. You're getting up like and doing a stretch, or, you know, something around the house, whatever it is, or even just like standing up and just closing your eyes for a moment, you know?
Awesome. So what would you like your Tuesday 5 years from now to look like?
Ooh, this is such a fun podcast. Okay. What would I like my Tuesday 5 years from now to look like? Continuing to do things like this, continue having conversations like this, just inspiring and motivating moms, people, whoever wants to listen on how to, you know, maintain some kind of balance and joy in your life. And just doing this full time. So what is this? Also teaching yoga, if that be to corporations, like maybe to my corporation that I'm currently at, doing more speaking engagements, being able to, because 5 years from now, my daughter will be 7.5 and my son will be, he'll be 9. So being able to go on their field trips or taking them, you know, playing hooky with school and just spending time with them and not having to worry about my job, because like I make my own schedule. So that was a really fun question.
Awesome. I love it. And it's so funny. It's just kind of a side note. You said playing hooky with your kids. You're just like, could you imagine our parents doing this?
No.
Like we are now the quote unquote cool parents that are just like, oh man, like oh man, you don't gotta go to school today. Let's go just make sure hang out. I was like, what?
Yes. I know. I would never, I'm trying to think, we never did things like that. It was, you got to go to school, you got to get your education. I did all that stuff now, mom and dad. Here I am. Like, I typically lived out their dream, and now I'm going into my own.
Yeah, no, I love it. Yeah, in the 90s, a cough would not let you stay home.
I know.
It's not enough to stay home.
I saw a TikTok or something about that. I was dead. I was like, that's literally, it's so different now. We're in a different time for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's hit some concluding questions, but you can feel free to elaborate, spend as much time as you want. I just want to be respectful of your time. What are a couple books that you would recommend to other entrepreneurs?
Yes, I'm like looking because I don't have that book with me right now, but 2 books I will recommend. The first one is The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. One of my coaches, she be reading that book every day. And like, not even kidding, she reads that book every day. It's a very short book, but it's called The Power of Awareness by Neville Goddard. And it just talks about being aware and how the more aware you are, the more powerful you are, and just creating the life that you deserve. And then the second book is Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz. It's a book about self-image, because I know as entrepreneurs, I speak from my experience, a lot of putting myself out there and like connecting with people who I think are like way more ahead of me has to do with my self-image and like, how do I view myself? So this book was written by a plastic surgeon, and he shares like his plastic surgeon stories and how like some parts of the book he says like no matter what you do to somebody's face, like some of these people, they're still not happy. Like they still are like, oh, but my nose, even though the nose was fixed, or, I don't like my cheek, whatever. And so he talks about how it has nothing to do with the outer. Like self-image really has to do with the inner. Like, do you genuinely like who you are? And he gives you like tips on like ways to build, to create your new self-image. Which, yes, it like, you can do physical things if you want, but a lot of it is internal work, internally, like doing that work. What is that work? Because I feel like a lot of, we say, do the work. Work is like the journaling, like taking that time to journal, going outside, connecting with nature, praying, meditating, moving your body. Like these are ways that you get to know yourself and know who you are. So then you can ultimately create this powerful self-image where nobody can shake you because you know who you are. And I feel like that's so important for entrepreneurs, is to know who you are so that you might get a little shaken, but like that you won't get completely laid out and you're like, I'm never going to put myself out there again. Like,
No, I love it. That's exciting. I'm definitely going to have to read that book because, you're right. Self-image is a big thing. And I could only imagine we all build our own self-image, right? And what we want people to see when we put ourselves out there. And we do it, I think, I would imagine, not incredibly consciously. Like we just kind of do it. And I think that the idea or the activity of rebuilding it with an intentional mindset sounds really intriguing. So definitely have to check that book.
It is. And that's part of the reason, like, if you knew me before, because I have friends that have known me like before I started all this personal development work, and they're like, man, Lesline, like you're killing it and you're so confident. Like, how? It's really it's the investing in myself. And it's also creating that self-image. Like I have journals of me writing out who I am, like what am I doing? And that's why I loved that you asked that question of like the 5 years from now, because I've journaled things like that. So that question, it just like the answer was just, it came so easy because I've done that in my head and on paper, which it's really powerful.
So I love it. What question do you think I should ask the next guest?
Oh wow. Okay. This is cool. Okay. I'm so nerd. I'm like, oh my god, this is so cool. I like this. Oh, maybe you've asked this before, but what did your first failure feel like?
Ooh,
Because that answer can go one of two ways. The person will either say failure is a lesson, da 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 da, or they'll say like, oh yeah, like, they'll go into this other more so, I don't want to say negative, but I know for me, failure is definitely a lesson. And it's like flipping. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. That's why I'm bringing this up. She's like, I just don't want to fail. Like she's not, which I know a lot of people are like this, like, I want to start that business, but I just don't want to fail. I want to make sure everything is perfect. And I was like, friend, there's no such thing as perfect, and you're gonna fail. And it's like, and then my other friend that was on the call was like, if you fail, that means you're actually trying.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what does first failure feel like?
I love the question for the reasons you just mentioned. And then also it takes away the whole, what did you learn from your failure? It's what did it feel like? Because the feeling of failure is a very, very, very interesting experience that I actually don't think is talked about enough. Because when you asked, I immediately thought about like, oh, these are the things I learned from my failure. I automatically think about what I got out of it, but I often don't reflect on the experience of what I actually felt. And I imagine, this is just me thinking, like pontificating, I actually imagine that reflecting on the feeling will actually make the next time that feeling arises not as scary. And that's really interesting. That's really interesting.
It's all about feeling. Everything we do is about feeling. And a lot of the time we ignore the feeling. And that's why with yoga, like it's like, because also with that, I'm a very actionable person. So it's like, I know I take in a lot of information probably just as much as you do. And it's like, but I like to know like, okay, how can I apply this? So with that question, like, how did your first failure feel like? And, think about that question. You could journal about it, or you can meditate. I'm pointing because my yoga mat's over there, but you can meditate and meditate on that question and notice like what comes up. And I say this all the time in my yoga classes, not attaching judgment. Like if you're like, well, I felt like a loser. I felt like I let everybody down. I felt like I let my parents down. Like, let the feelings come up. Let them come up. And one last thing I'll say with that is like, you can meditate silently, but you can also, I'm a big advocate for speaking out loud, like getting it out and like using your throat and like that because we have chakras and all of that stuff. It's important to like use your voice, even if nobody is listening. God is listening. So like use your voice and say how you feel. Say how you feel and get it out.
Yeah. No, that's really good advice. I'm trying to do a better job of using the voice to text function on my phone for that exact reason. It's like
I'm better with that. I just do voice memos. I'm like the 5-minute voice memo person. I don't think some people are like, God.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. Like I really want to start using the voice to text, because a lot of people have told me like, oh, you should journal, especially you should journal the experience of becoming an entrepreneur, becoming a dad. Like it could be really interesting. And so the voice to text I think would be really, really impactful. Okay. Last question. Well, 2 questions. Okay. What type of entrepreneur would you be most interested in hearing on the podcast?
Oh. Do I like to listen to? Ooh, like parenting coach.
Okay.
Yeah, I love listening on, because you know how I was talking about feeling and expressing your feelings. I wasn't able to express my feelings growing up. So, you know, here I am now. I'm learning how to do it now and teaching my kids how to do it so that they can be better earlier in life.
Yeah.
So I think a parenting coach would be a cool person to have, or like some type of psychologist that specializes in parenting or familial relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah, that'd be cool. That also would be helpful for me personally.
Yeah, it's like for you too. Not saying that in like a bad way. I'm just saying like I'm very fascinated with parenting, and like, you know, there's the whole gentle parenting thing right now. Some people like it, some people don't, but I just find it fascinating with like a lot of it is just letting your kid feel and express themselves, and also learning how to check in with you. And that's why like I just always come back to my yoga, because like we all are allowed to have our own experiences, and like as your kid becomes their own person, you're gonna say like, oh, okay, you having your experience, I'm gonna have my experience. Like we can coexist in the house, like, you know.
Yeah, no, it's such a good point. All right, last question. Where can people find you? Tell people about how to reach out.
Yes. You can find me on my website, leslinepittman.com. That is spelled LeslinePittman.com. I am also on Instagram at Lesline Pittman. I am on LinkedIn, Lesline Pittman. Everywhere is my name. So you just type my name. I think the first thing right now that comes up is my LinkedIn profile, which I've been more active over there, like I was sharing with you earlier. But yeah, check me out on my website, because I have a virtual yoga studio where I host monthly virtual yoga classes. And for $25 a month, you can become a member and currently get access to 11 of my yoga classes, meditations. I've even had like other wellness people that I love have conversations with me about, you know, balance and mom and all that stuff. Yeah, that's it. Just go to the website. That's my home online. Yeah.
That's awesome. Lesline, this has been incredible. This has been a fun conversation, an enlightening conversation. You've got me rejuvenated and
good.
Thinking about even the rest of my day a little bit differently. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. This was fun. I had so much fun. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's already over. Like, this was really fun. I can't wait to see how people receive it.
All right, I appreciate it. If you found this video to be helpful, please like, subscribe, or leave a comment. If you're an entrepreneur and want to share your journey and be helpful to others, please hit us up on our social media channels, or you can shoot us an email at behelpfulpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks. Be helpful.